Hi, it's John Paul, host of the Car Doctor radio program and podcast. And with us is NASCAR driver Austin Cindric. And Austin, thanks for being on the program. First off, how did you get involved in racing? And how long have you been with Team Penske?
Yeah, so racing in NASCAR since 2015. Started in the Truck Series. After a year of racing in the Truck Series, I raced for Team Penske pretty much from there on out. Through the Xfinity Series all the way into the Cup Series. And before that, any type of race car you can imagine, whether if that's road racing, open wheel, rallycross, stock cars, go-karts, you name it. I probably drove it before I started my NASCAR career, but bit of a different pathway into the sport. There's some drivers that really only have dreams of being a NASCAR driver and racing in the Cup Series. And for me, I just want to be a race car driver, no matter what the car was and how I got there. And certainly probably a more unconventional path to the top level of the sport.
And when it comes to racing, it's really all about competition. And it sounds like, when you went from, you raced everything from go-kart to open wheel. Is it all about the competition? Is it all about, trying to win? I guess that's a stupid question. Of course you want to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is that competitive nature, I guess, that you have to have. But I guess in some senses, and as I've done this for a long enough time and learned plenty about myself, I am a bit of a perfectionist, and there's a certain part of me that um, gets excited about winning, and then there's a certain part of me that gets excited about being the best and doing all the right things and working with the people around you to be the best, not just to win. You can win on any given good day, but being the best and being able to have repeatability and that consistency at running up front, and that's what Team Penske is all about. It's about that pursuit of being the best and staying there for a long time. Obviously, this organization has won a lot of races, a lot of big races, and had a lot of successful drivers, and it's because of that mentality.
And you talk about the team, you talk about the team around you. How important is it to be able to like sort of set your ego aside and work with the team?
I think teamwork is incredibly important. It is an individual sport in the sense that there's not just a winner and a loser every day. There's 39 losers and only one winner. So we're used to losing a lot. So I guess in that sense, I think that already curbs your ego a little bit more, probably compared to other sports. But it's hard to define success as well, because you don't win every race. Your win to loss percentage is obviously quite shifted. So trying to figure out what makes a good day and what to gain off of, and how do you define progress is sometimes challenging, and you have to lean on the people around you, because especially at the highest level, you have to have everything right. Maybe some of the lower series, or as you're younger, you can overcome issues, or people make or are more apt to making mistakes, whereas in the Cup Series at the highest level of the sport, you can't expect or rely on people to have mistakes. You have to just purely be better to be able to make better decisions, or come with better preparation. So in that sense, you have to have everything right. The pit stops have to be great. The setup of the race car has to be great. The adjustments that you do throughout the race, and that's all through prep work, through working together, through communication. It takes all of those pieces to be able to expect yourself to be able to win week in and week out in the Cup Series.
And how about the physical preparation? Sometime back, talking to Bob Tasker, he runs a funny car. He's in the car. You're in the car for hours. He probably doesn't have 100 hours in his car, because they're 3.5 seconds at a time. He's a vegan. He's in the gym all the time. I talked to Matt Hagan, who's I think he lifts up steers to stay in shape, and he's a beef eater. They all work out differently, but they all try to stay in as good a condition as they can. How do you stay in that kind of condition, the condition you are, and to be behind the wheel for that long, in depending on where you are in the heat of the day?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about endurance, not just for, our races are usually 3 to 4 hours long, depending on how many cautions or how long the racetrack is or whatever else. But obviously the heat, I think there's a certain amount of conditioning that you have to be prepared for with the heat of the cars, and then obviously the loads and the physical task that you have week to week. But it's also a 38-week season with one off weekend,
Mm.
and that's a long season. It's a long amount of time to be putting yourself through that stress. So it is about endurance. It's about keeping up with yourself, whether if it's just staying loose, mobility wise. I spend, if we're home 4 days a week, I spend, 3 of those days in the gym. And it's not about, you don't have to be a bodybuilder to be a race car driver, but it's about being able to also withstand, the crashes, the impacts that you have, being fit enough for that. So your bones and your joints aren't taking the stress of those impacts. You're strong enough. So I think it's a lot of those things that really add up. But I'm one of those people that my physical fitness is just as much mental as it is physical, because it's one more thing I can check off and say, hey, I've done this. I've done one more thing that will lead to me being the best that I can be. And I feel like doing that prep work, being able to say, okay, I've done this. I've done everything I can do before this race, before this week. That gives you a lot of clarity heading into a race, knowing that you've used all the resources that you have to be able to go out and be successful.
So you're on the TB12 Tom Brady diet regimen?
I am not. I'm not a dieter. I certainly keep track of what
Yeah,
I eat. I'm definitely not a vegan.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah.
I
Because
think I think it takes
what,
balance.
yeah, because what you said actually sounds a lot like what he says when he was up here in New England playing football. It was all about the mental and physical preparation that goes into that. Sponsorship is so very important to racing. How do you interact with your sponsors? From somebody who's got a little tiny decal on the car to somebody who owns the hood.
Well, I think that's what makes NASCAR so much different, I think, than other sports, is that I'm a representative for a company, whereas athletes in other sports are representatives just for their team and their sport, and that's it. Whereas we add on to that, obviously the corporate partnerships, and it obviously adds probably more to my job off the racetrack than on the racetrack. But when we're at the track, and especially when we have people that come and obviously root us on every week, and then they come and experience that, it's fun because you have a group of people that are behind you and invested in you and your race team and in your performance, probably more than any race fan could ever be. But when you have those wins, and you're able to celebrate with that group, and we have 400 some odd employees at Team Penske, but when we win, the trickle down effect is massive between the car manufacturer, the sponsors on our race cars. I mean, you can quickly make an outreach of over 100,000 people that are just as excited as you are that you won a race, you succeeded. And I think that's the give back to the extra work that I feel like that's added on to that. But it's obviously a culture in our sport, because race fans identify cars and drivers with the names of these companies more than anything else. I'll never forget, and I always remember when you think about how that model works, is when I was a kid playing the NASCAR video game. My friend didn't know anything about NASCAR, but he knew that was that sponsor, so he just referenced the sponsor the entire time as far as the car. And I think that's the difference, because that's how you identify. It's not, hey, he's wearing a red suit, he's wearing a red jersey. No, he's driving this car for this sponsor, and he's a representative of that. And I think the fans are easily drawn to what that means.
An old friend of mine was in the ARCA race a couple of weeks ago in Daytona, and his sponsorship did pretty well. And I understand you were up in the booth because he slid across the Daytona green with about 4 laps left to go. So we got a lot of camera time and ended up spun around and ended up, I think, in 10th place at the end, Dale Quarterly. And he's I mean, he's an old guy now. I think he's 60 something, but he started off, his father owned a little go-kart mini bike shop, and he started off racing go-karts and went through Superbike, then went into NASCAR for a little while, and then got banged up a little bit, and then does some other stuff. how did it feel to be up in the booth during the ARCA race?
Yeah, I certainly enjoy driving the cars a lot more than talking about them, but it's interesting to be able to see it from that point of view. I watch a lot of film. I watch a lot of past races, in my preparation. So I probably have gone somewhat critical of racing announcers just because I've watched a lot of racing. So it's kind of fun to put my money where my mouth is on some of that stuff. But it's a great perspective, and especially in some of those lower series where guys are just trying to try and figure it out, or kind of break through. It's easy to see the gains when you're watching from that perspective, especially in the ARCA Menard series. So it's fun. I enjoy it, but I certainly enjoy driving the cars a lot more.
Yeah, watch out for Dale. He's going to be in the truck race in Texas. So uh,
Great.
uh, the before we let you go, I mean, you've been doing this for a few years now. What was it like? And I remember, I'm a nobody radio guy, and somebody came up to me and asked me for an autograph one time, and I'm like, what, on a check? What, an autograph? But what was it like as you started to gain popularity and people would come up to you and want an autograph?
Yeah, even now it's still somewhat of a strange experience. I mean, it's obviously more expected, but yeah, certainly when I was younger in my career, yeah, like kind of expect like why do you want this? Like
Yeah,
it's not worth anything. Like, but it's and some of it's the experience, and I say that, and even when I was a little kid growing up around racing, my dad on the team and me kind of just hanging out, I'd go around and just ask crew members, to sign my hat, and I'd leave every race with a hat full of signatures, but I couldn't even tell you who signed it. It's some of it's just part of the event experience, and just to it's an example of hey, you were there, you experienced it, you were at the event, you were able to get the most out of it. I think that has a lot to do with it. I feel like pictures are more meaningful probably than that, because it's everyone's got a camera in their pocket now, so
yeah,
taking a quick selfie or whatever else. I think that's, to me, that's the new autograph. That's the new way of saying, hey, I was here, I met this guy. Because to me, it's a lot more meaningful and a lot more visually representative. But yeah, the autograph culture is pretty huge in NASCAR, and the accessibility to the drivers is greater than any other sport with the accessibility to the athlete. Because if you think about the NBA or the NFL, if you go to a game, you're not seeing LeBron James. You're not going to go see Tom Brady. You're not going to get to shake their hand or ask them for something. If you go to a NASCAR race and you get inside of the racetrack, there's a good chance you're going to see your favorite race car driver, not just a driver. You're probably going to see whoever you're rooting for, and you're probably going to have a chance to get them to sign something or ask him or say hi or whatever. Whereas that's not an experience you'd really be able to get in any other sport.
yeah. It's not. It's you talk to NASCAR fans, and you're absolutely right. I remember talking to folks from Procter and Gamble, and when Tide's on the hood of a car and their car does well, Tide sales go up. So for you to be able to, I guess you can't snub a fan, because when you do, you're not just doing that for yourself, you're also doing that for your car full of sponsors. So, like you said, you're not just representing a team, you're representing a much wider group of people, and you have to kind of have to be on your best behavior the whole time, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And some days it's hard to remember that, especially in that situation where you've got, like, I'm at the racetrack to do my job, and I've got a fan who's, sometimes some are more pushy than others as far as getting what they want. And, sometimes I have to go somewhere, and sometimes you just have to say no. And people don't like being told no. So it's definitely a difficult part of all that, to navigate as far as the moral compass. And like you said, it's more because you're representing, certain amount of people. Sometimes if you piss off a race fan, that they're going to say, well, I'm not going to, shop at this store anymore
Yeah,
because, you didn't sign my book. Like,
yeah.
like, well, sorry,
No,
I have to go
yeah,
do my job.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. You have to go win a race. Speaking of
yeah.
winning races, what's coming up next?
Yeah, so we're headed to Las Vegas this coming weekend. Get the Pennzoil 400. So excited about that. That was a good race for us. Good track for us last year, especially at the end of the year. Qualified on the front row and ran up front most of the race. So got that, finish off the West Coast swing, and all the way through through Atlanta, and then start count. I live week to week, so looking past Vegas is hard enough. But yeah, excited about it. But yeah, season's in full swing now.
Austin, I want to thank you for taking a little time out of your day to join us on the Car Doctor radio program.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate
All
it.
right.